So, welcome to this session, on fostering breakthrough technologies for the creative and cultural industries ecosystem, where we're going to consider what the digital transition really means for this ecosystem, with a couple of presentations on extended reality, XR, then a series of one-on-one interviews. I'm going to be talking to some people working in the field about the impact, actual and potential of those technologies and how to exploit them, and a short discussion on how to make sure that this sector can seize all the opportunities that those breakthrough technologies offer. Delighted first to give the floor to Rehana Schwiningen-Ladek, Head of Unit for Interactive Technologies, Digital for Culture and Education in the European Commission's Directorate General for Communication Networks, Content and Technology, better known to most of us in Brussels as DG Connect, to introduce the session and the topic. Rehana, thank you to you and to DG Grow for organising this session. Over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. So a very warm welcome to everyone from sunny Luxembourg. So that makes me really optimistic, when there is sunshine, and I hope it's the same wherever you are. And I have to congratulate you, Jackie, for pronouncing correctly my last name, because that is actually a challenge. So it is my pleasure to open this session related to fostering breakthrough technologies for the cultural and creative ecosystems growth, and to be in this session together with my colleague Anna Atanasopoulou, who will be doing the closing remarks. The EU Industry Days are one of our flagship yearly events that aim at highlighting industrial frontrunners and ongoing industrial policy discussions, whilst improving the knowledge base that we have of the European industries, or the different European industries. And it gives us the opportunity to discuss challenges faced by specific industry and co-develop opportunities and policy responses with a wide range of stakeholders. And this session will be particularly about how breakthrough technologies such as extended reality can help cultural and creative industries to grow. Now, the social distancing that we have been experiencing now for 2 years, and the successive global lockdowns, and are still not completely out of it, as well as pressing concerns about climate change, these have all accelerated the need for the development and the adoption of such what we call zero-distance application and interaction. And extended reality technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality, or mixed realities are opening new ways of experiencing and communicating with the environment and between ourselves. They have the potential to disrupt many sectors, hard industries such as manufacturing or construction, as well as sectors such as health, education, of course, the sector of interest to us today, the cultural and creative industries. And we see already that XR technologies are opening new advanced applications and innovative use cases. For instance, the blending of XR technologies and high quality content open new ways of engaging specific audiences through more immersive storytelling. One brilliant example can be found, for instance, on the European Pro platform, where you will see the latest series that explores the motivation and experiences of cultural heritage institutions to embracing this new technology. So I really invite you to see this 10D experience, which really shows the discovery of Casa Batlló using all this cutting-edge technology. And another promising example is going to be the whole creative cooperation for new ways of storytelling and interaction that we are going to support through the VR Media Lab that we're soon going to launch in the coming months. And this VR Lab will enable joint work and mutual learning between representatives of various professional groups such as journalists, filmmakers, game designers, technology specialists, and researchers. So this cross-fertilization is really an important dimension of the Media and Audiovisual Action Plan that the Commission published in December 2020. And it has 10 actions, to support the recovery of the media and audiovisual sectors.
Very briefly, if you would, Rehana.
Yes. Sure. And I'm coming to it. So this is just an example, of the actions that we are setting to show how breakthrough technologies such as extended reality are key for the growth of CCIs. And so this brings me to our distinguished speakers today, Dr. Volker Helsler.
Okay, I'll take us through the speakers a little bit later on. Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, this is important for us to hear from you, discuss challenges, and see how we can co-develop policy responses to support the growth of CCIs. And I'll be listening to you very, very eagerly. So back to you, Jackie, because you are a very strict timekeeper.
I am very sorry, but we have 1 hour and we have to stick to time at this because it's a whistle-stop tour throughout the day. But as you said, that importance of co-developing policy responses, we've been talking about co-creation, we've been talking about co-implementation, here co-developing together, and we're going to talk about how CCIs indeed can help to shape policy. Rahana, thank you very much for that introduction. As Rahana mentioned, we are going to start with a couple of presentations focusing on extended reality, XR. Delighted first to give the floor to Professor Volker Helsler, who is Senior Lecturer and Head of R&D at the Animationsinstitut of Filmakademie Baden-Württemberg. He's going to give us a presentation, please no more than the 7 or minutes, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions afterwards, then we'll move on. And then, as I say, after a second presentation on XR, I'm going to talk to some people working at the front end, the sharp end of all of this, to see how they think these technologies can change the industry and what we need to do to exploit them. But Volker, thank you so much for being with us today. Over to you.
Thank you. Great honor to be sharing some thoughts with you. Can you start the presentation, please? Okay. Yeah, next slide. And that's the title of my talk, XR Disrupting Established Production Procedures and in film, animation, and visual effects. So I work for Filmakademie Baden-Württemberg. We are a film school located in Ludwigsburg, that's close to Stuttgart in southern Germany. You can study about anything related to filmmaking at Filmakademie. We have our own institute for the education of the students in animation, effects, and interactive media. That's Animationsinstitut, established in 2002. We have 600 students in total, 120 in animation. Filmakademie is also in charge of organizing FMX conference, which, by the way, will be a hybrid event, so you can visit us in May. Next slide, please. A few informations about our research and innovation work. So we're involved in multiple regional and EU level projects, and there's a strong link to the effects and animation industry because we structure our curriculum around people that we bring in from the industry and that share their experience with the students. Our research sectors are in digital actors, animation in non-entertainment, especially in medical sectors. We've done some work in autism research here. AI for creative industries. So what does an artist need in terms of a tool? And of course, XR, embracing virtual, augmented, and mixed reality, and virtual production, which I'll explain in detail in one of the following slides. So next slide, please. Yeah, a few informations about EU project Source, Smart Assets for Reuse in Creative Environments. It's been a 3-year Horizon 2020 funded project, and the consortium has been built around commercial and academic partners. And one of the key focus was to discover assets, reuse them, and transform them by using artificial intelligence. Now you might wonder, what does that have to do with extended reality? Let me give you an example of a demand that came from an industry partner. So there is one partner that delivers high-end visual effects for big blockbuster movies. And he explained, sometimes in the middle of these productions, we are required or requested, can you also deliver a virtual reality experience? And technically we could, but the assets that we've created up until that point, they're done for film, and they have a very different requirements than what you need for a virtual reality experience. And that's why we've built this framework that can discover and transform and reuse assets for whatever output media. Semantic animation did deal with how character animation could align semantically to its surroundings. And light fields, I would like to mention again, from acquisition to creative use, the lower two pictures, So we at Film Academy have been given access to a 8x8 64 camera rig from partner Saarland University, creating the unfolding 1 and 2.0 versions, featuring a young German cellist, Isabel Geweiler. So we could create a setting where we could actually capture a light field and then post-process that data in a way that we were able to work with focus layers that would have been otherwise impossible. Next slide, please. That's a still from a holographic display that we then also can use to display that light field production, so you can get a three-dimensional impression without wearing any glasses. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to talk about virtual production, and if you have not heard about it, I'll do my best to give you a very, very simple introduction, because virtual production comes with a lot of flavors. There's a lot of things that could be classified as virtual production. Here's also a definition from gentlemen at the Visual Effects Society that I find very suitable. But where we're coming from is the upper picture. We have a studio and there is a large green screen. It's been evenly lit. We're going to shoot against that green screen. We're going to take that data and put it into a post-production process. And then we're removing the green screen and put in digital assets in the background. That's where we are coming from. And where we're moving to is the situation on the lowest left side, a mixed reality setup involving large-scale LED walls and real-time graphics, so-called in-camera visual effects. They allow you to shoot exactly what you see. Next slide, please. Now, at Film Academy, we've been involved in virtual production for quite some time, back to 27. We've also been part of the DreamSpace project from 2013 to 16. That's been an FP7 project. And we've investigated a lot of tools around what can you do to enhance communication with virtual elements on a set. So you can see here is a physical set element, a storefront, and then we can extend that by the use of just custom hardware. That's nothing professional, it's just an iPad. And then start a creative discussion with the set designers. Next slide, please. The same applies for lighting. So if you're in front of one,
but I'm going to have to ask you to be really brief. We're running over time and we've got so much. I'm really sorry, so much to fit into this session.
So this is just showing light interaction in front of a LED screen. And then let's move on to the next slide. Because here is really the summary of where is the disruption here, right? So what we can do now with this LED walls is a true collaborative workflow where all creative departments are able to interact and see what the creative vision is. There is no more fix it in post, and you can also shoot a sunset 24/7 if you want to. Challenges in education are a different skill set and a huge requirement for technical understanding. And I would like to mention that virtual production does also have a high potential on sustainability and green screen. So with that, I have 6 minutes, but I have a video that if you want to show it, but probably there's not enough time, right?
I'm really sorry, but we are on a whistle-stop tour here. But Volker, thank you so much. Can I just ask you 2 very quick questions before we move on? And I see on the bottom of your slide there, you talk about green shooting. And I just wanted to ask you very briefly, how is that being applied, both in pre-production, in production, post-production, I mean, all the way along the chain? How is it really happening now?
Yeah, it is happening, and actually, that's the great thing with virtual production. It holds a lot of potential for green shooting, because what you can do, you can send somebody to a remote location, maybe a team of 2 with drones and with high quality photography. They scan that set, they bring it back into your digital environment. And you don't need to fly your entire cruise around the world to go and shoot on location. That's not a solution for everything, but it can change a lot because these travel costs are gigantic in film productions. There's a good report, the Screen New Deal, that states that this is really big. The other thing I would like to say is that we've really investigated the power use when looking at offline rendering and real-time production. And we're compiling a report that we're going to publish maybe in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. This is going to be very interesting, huge potential for green and sustainable solutions.
And one very quick other one I wanted to squeeze in terms of how Europe is doing in using these technologies. Is the take-up there? I mean, I have seen suggestions that we might be lagging a bit behind the United States and Asia. How are we doing in this area?
I would say we're doing good. There's so many great companies. There's Vajo in Finland. There is Brainstorm in Spain. They're doing these virtual production and virtual studio things for a very long time, very efficiently. There's the Mac family. They're doing virtual roller coaster rides and selling them worldwide. There is they've also engaged in this location-based entertainment. So I think in terms of creating stuff, we're really good. In my personal bubble, I think it's still not that easy to get seed funding and really good funding if you have a great idea. That's where people go best.
I want to come back on what some of the barriers are, what the challenges are a bit later. But for now, Volker, thank you very much. We're now going to turn to Spiros Nikopoulos, Senior Researcher at Information Technologies Institute in the Centre for Research and Technology, HILAS CERT ITI. Very good to have you with us, Spiros. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for having me here so as to share our experience with the fashion industry, which is what I'm about to speak. Yes, I'm a senior researcher here in the Center of Research and Technology in Greece that has a lot of different disciplines and technologies that are being developed. One of them, let's say, who have developed expertise in the extended reality, and we thought that we can apply this for fashion. And what we have tried to formulate it here in our project, an eTry-on, as we call it, which is an EU-funded project, of course, under the Interactive Technologies call, is how to formulate the human fashion experience, how to formulate the human fashion interaction. And in this respect, we have tried to touch upon three different aspects. One is the creative process that takes place in the, let's say, creative industry, in the fashion industry, where we try to support the designers and offer them a better environment and more realistic environment to interact with the clothes and, let's say, have more ideas. The other is social, that is very much intertwined with fashion, and now it has become, let's say, a very, very essential part of how people communicate and how people, let's say, promote their clothes. So there is a Dress Me Up application that we are developing to help influencers, let's say, wear digital clothes and circulate these images. And the other touches upon the consumer and, let's say, the shopping experience. So who do here try to implement this futuristic application of the Magic Mirror app, where you can, let's say, see yourself in front of a mirror and see yourself wearing a certain cloth. Next slide, please. However, before we go into, let's say, the details of the applications, let's try to, let's say, attempt a landscape of the XR in fashion. Here we can, let's say, locate the different developments into an axis of physical to metaverse, and also color them based on whether they are widespread, established, nascent, and future. Here, as a quick look, you can see that there is only, let's say, a few developments that can be considered widespread, like in-game clothing. A lot of have been done by the game industry in putting, let's say, clothes to their virtual characters. A few more can be considered as established, like virtual assembling, where let's say, the fashion designers are trying to cut down fabric costs, so they do the assembling, the initial assembling in virtually, the initial assembling of their garments virtually, before they go into the actual stitching and doing the fabric garment. And most can they be considered nonsense. So they do have, let's say, they have been born. They are being investigated, but they still have some time to become, let's say, move into the established area. So here we can see that AR, VR product view, the digital models, and virtual fashion, and so on. All of this, we have seen ideas, we have seen spin-offs, let's say, working on them, but still not something very much mature that can be considered as established. And of course, we can also see that the future thing, so which is we consider like a virtual collaborative design, or the real-time AR eTry-on, which is something that our project touches upon. Next slide, please. And again, here we can see the same kind of axis from physical to metaverse, but we can see some of, let's say, the struggles or some of the things that are, let's say, competing with each other when you move from one world to another. So we can see that accuracy versus realism when you go from the physical to metaverse. We have the inertia from legacy user experience interfaces in the physical world. When we try to move to the metaverse, we most value interactivity and immersion. And again, we try to move from, let's say, specialist platforms into existing platforms. So there is a kind of struggle where you try to move an industry from its physical realism to its, let's say, metaverse presence. And we all need to struggle with them, and we all need to fill this gap. Next slide, please. Here I will quickly go through the apps that we have been developing. This is design in VR. So essentially what we want there to offer was to offer the designers, let's say the creative peoples in a fashion house, a better way to design their clothes. Our departure was that they already designed their clothes in 3D. They are using professional software tools that they design their clothes in 3D. However, they kind of lack the necessary tools to be able to experience how they would look in a realistic wearing this garment. So how the cloth drapes, or what kind of other, let's say, interactions we'll have with the body, so as to get a better feeling of whether what they have designed is acceptable or not. And this is what we do. The designer app is a showroom that actually puts an avatar wearing a garment and puts an avatar doing a number of animations, a number of, let's say, of different simulations. And the VR designer wearing the VR headset is able to, let's say, look the avatar from all different angles and see all the details of draping and other, let's say, interactions that the garment has with the body, the avatar body. And in this, you can understand that we do have a requirement for very high simulation, high realistic simulation, high quality simulations, because it's important for them to understand during the design process. Next slide, please. And then the other, let's say, very, very appealing app is the Magic Mirror app. I guess you can all understand what is the Magic Mirror app. Nevertheless, there are many, many hurdles that we have to overcome in order to be able to offer them. First of all, it has to do with the body shape. So we need to work on parametric avatars in different sizes, so as to be able to have a convincing simulation between the body and the clothes. So a lot of work has been done in this respect. Then we have to work on the garment. I mean, we do receive a 3D designed garment from, let's say, the fashion designer and from a professional software, but a lot of, let's say, details have to be taken care of, like the styling and the skinning and so on, so as to be able to offer something realistic, so as to be able to offer something that actually reacts to what the people can, to, let's say, to the movements of the people standing in front of a camera. And then, of course, we have to apply the body tracking, which should be able to go to detect in real time all the movements, the body movements, hand movements that the human does in front of, let's say, the phone camera, and be able to respond to this in a very, very realistic manner.
Spiros, we are almost out of time. Sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Yes, I'm wrapping up. So this is, let's say, the most, let's say, futuristic and the most challenging aspect. And it, let's say, encapsulates also the difficulties that we have in putting XR into the process. And the next slide, please, it's just, let's say, we have also integrated here as a Snapchat. Just to say that it's a very, very good thing that all the major platforms like Facebook and Snapchat and so on are offering already services that can facilitate this process, like body tracking and so on. So already we had the chance to integrate one of our, let's say, developments into a Snapchat that you can already use yourself wearing these clothes. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Spiros. Fascinating stuff. And just to that point about the difficulties that you have in putting XR into the process, is it inevitable it will disrupt existing workflows, or can it be done relatively easy, that you integrate it into processes? Yes, I mean, in this project, we collaborate with Odlo, which is a function company, let's say major function company, and it has become very, very clear already from the proposal preparation phase that it's very, very difficult to let's say, change their workflows, to change what they already did. So I guess that the best bet, at least at this point, for XR technologies to, let's say, make a disruption or make a difference into the industry is to see how they can plug in their value into the existing workflows. not so much ask them to change their workflows, because then the collision there becomes very, let's say, major. Essentially, the industry is no longer interested in, let's say,
absolutely,
putting the XR value.
Thank you. And in terms of another thing I want to just ask you about is simulations, very realistic simulation. What's the value of it? Why is it so important when we're looking at industrial applications?
Yes, this was another thing that was, let's say, a little bit surprising in a sense, because as technicians, we did manage to produce some results that we could consider as acceptable. This was not the case when, let's say, actually go to the experts and show them the simulations. So they do require very, very high quality simulations, because, let's say, it's at the core of their business, is at the core of their creativity. So at some point we had to balance, let's say, to put some bias on putting out there high quality simulations, the best possible simulations, and sacrifice a little bit the interactivity and let's say what you can do within the VR space. This was, let's say, a compromise that we had to do.
Thank you very much, Spiros. Fascinating stuff. And if you can stay with us, that would be great, because I'm going to have a couple of chats with various people now, but then I would like to try and draw some conclusions with all of you towards the end of our session about where we go from here. So as I mentioned earlier, after those two fascinating presentations, going to have a series of one-on-one conversations with people, if I can put it this way, in the front line, working in the industry, and so on. So I have with me, delighted to welcome with me on stage, Natasha Paulsen, who is founder and CEO of 4DR Studios and creative director at Dutch Rose Media. And I know you're specialized in the development of creative and sustainable AR concepts. 4DR Studios, as I understand it, is the first volumetric video studio in the Netherlands. Perhaps 2 words on what volumetric video is, and in terms of the challenge for the industry to use it, to capitalize on it. How do you see that, and how are you dealing with it?
So the first on what volumetric video is. Volumetric video is the quality of normal video, but then in 3D. So you can capture people with all their creases and smiles.
Oh dear.
And movements. Yes, sorry.
Doesn't sound good.
No, but that sounds actually really good, because we as humans immediately recognize another human. So you can see in the eyes that it's a real human that you're seeing. The movements change. It's really important for all kinds of applications.
And the use of it and the challenge of using it effectively?
The challenge of using it effectively is that in the end, when you see it, it looks absolutely normal. So you can't imagine how hard it is to create the actual volumetric video. And it's a complete different way of working. So about not changing the workflows, when you start using volumetric video, everything goes upside down. If you work with film directors, they are used to, let me try like this, they look to the world like this.
Yep.
Right? Our world is 3D, so they have to learn how to look at it in a different way.
Oh, I see. And just in terms of the way you work on this, the collaboration between the industry, between the tech providers, researchers and so on, there is, I know, there was a funded program called Chronosphere, an R&D program. What was the model of collaboration there, and can it be replicated, do you think, across the EU?
So first I have to give some kudos to France, because there, a long time ago, at the University of Grenoble, they found out the base of the technology that we are using. Then they built a company on that for the views, and they actually produced the best volumetric systems in the world. No discussion about that. So thanks, guys. And now we use one of their systems, Holosys, and to get that funded, it was really a problem, because the banks weren't interested because it was too high risk. The funds weren't interested because it was too techy. The researchers weren't interested because it was too practical. So nobody was interested but me. So I wanted it, and I decided to just
because you could see the potential.
Yeah, I'd been working in AR for 8 years, and if you want to convince people, you need people to convince other people. So in AR, we needed, in our stories, we needed actual people. But AR is a 3D medium, so you need 3D people. So there was nothing available for that.
And is the technology, how mature is the technology, and how do you see its take-up? You said you were the only person who was interested. Are we seeing growing interest? How do you think the next 5 years will go?
Yeah, so over the last 2 years, we had something called COVID, but we still exist. What we did was we took all of our marketing budget and put it up as co-financing for guys in the creative industry that had already plans using people in virtual realities. Right. And they all had their own solutions. So what we did is, listen, if you use our technology, we will pay the extra cost. And that's how we built and put together an entire research program. So we started with the SMEs in the creative industry, with already their applications in living history, entertainment, fashion, and training. And we built on that. We put in a little bit of extra money, got some other funds interested because there was money available, and then put in the research in the end to validate all the results. And this is opening up the market.
Fascinating. So showing what can be done if you realise that potential, you see it, and you know what to do with it, which you clearly did. Interesting to talk about maybe things that could be done to help you in the future if we have time at the end. But let's continue to collect experiences of this. Luca Morena, co-founder and CEO of Next Atlas, which, as I understand it, helps brands to visualise these trends easily. So how to take them up, why to take them up, what's in it for them, if you like. Luca, how do you see the key trends at the moment? We've talked about XR, we've been talking about volumetric video, but more broadly, data science and artificial intelligence, and which sectors are most likely to benefit from it? You're helping brands, I think, across the range.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you for having me. We've been on the front lines here since, I think, 2012. So we've seen it all. Interestingly, also it's very difficult to compress all the trends here that are interesting right now. But I would say that there are mainly three macro trends that we can talk about, which is data science applied and AI applied for understanding, which is our own field where my company is active since 2012. AI for augmenting, and of course AI for generating. Let me say that now, of course, the rising stars are using AI for content generation, energy, all this stuff, which is super nice and super fancy. But I would say that the ugly brother here is the understanding side. So all the AI methods that developed in the last few years to extract hidden meanings from text and visuals. So I think that this is the still the most, let's say, established and important part of the things that we are seeing. Most of the things that we are now excited about are still a long way, at least in terms of being, if you think about replacing humans in the creativity, let's say, workflow. Of course, it's still more still human centric. Everything is still designed to augment rather than replace, and so I would say that we don't have to forget, let's say, the understanding side of the AI technology.
Yeah. And you talk, Luca, about rising stars. Are there lots of rising stars? Are there many companies that are taking advantage of this, or is there still a long way to go in terms of raising awareness? I wanted to link it to what Natasha was saying about she was the only one who really said, yeah, I want that, I'm going to use it. What's the situation more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, my own experience was that when we presented the very first dashboard for trend prediction in 2014, the first prototypes, all the companies we contacted, the big companies, so we were a startup at the time, were like looking at us like it was science fiction. So, but of course, in the last 5 years, things have changed dramatically. I read a study on the Crunchbase database, and it seems like, of course, gaming, immersive experiences are, the applications in which AI is used more right now. But fashion and design, for instance, are growing a lot. And interestingly, everything is now skyrocketing because of the metaverse hype. So I think that the other driver here is the sustainability. For instance, the fashion industry. Yeah. We talk a lot with fashion industry companies because they want to use AI, let's say, to, for instance, overcome overproduction, to have like better stock management. This is interesting applications, still, strategic, creative applications, but
Thank you.
on the sustainability side.
One last quick question, quick reply if you would, because we'll then need to move on. But in terms of mindsets, helping creative entrepreneurs to develop the mindsets that they need. And Volker was talking about younger generations, working with younger generations to develop those mindsets. What do we need to do, briefly, if you would?
Yeah, I think that we it's crucial to transition, let's say, from a risk to opportunity mindset. I think that EU citizens and companies have been, more and more educated about the risks of current and future technologies, with policies designed to instill precaution, protection, awareness of risk. This is all good. Now we will have the Artificial Intelligence Act, but we should have like a parallel effort to foster, let's say, the opportunity mindset. I think that there's trust to be built, and there's education to be made. And I think this is the real interesting, let's say, mindset change from risk to opportunity. This is very crucial.
Thank you very much. Stay with us if you would. Hope to come back on some of these issues a little bit later on. Now we're going to turn to Michela Magas, creator and chair of Industry Commons Foundation, a member of Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's high-level roundtable for the new European Bauhaus Initiative, and a member of the advisory board at CERN Idea Square. Michela, thank you for joining us today. Just broadly, I would like to get your perspective, to add to those we've already had, on the role of breakthrough technologies in these sectors, and the role that art and creativity itself is playing in their development.
I would say that the contribution from the culture creative sector to these technologies is tremendous, and there is a very good reason for this. There is a particular methodology that the culture creative sector develops in the creative practitioners, which is if they apply this vigorously, they're able to project subject matter from different perspectives, various different perspectives and viewpoints. This is incredibly valuable when it comes to frontier technologies such as artificial intelligence or neural networks, for instance, anything that involves deep learning. What we have found from experimentation from multidisciplinary teams is that the scientific methods of inquiry, which rely on either prior art or statistical probability, so either deduction or induction, actually often struggle with the results that are thrown up by these new technologies. And then what really happens is that the creative methodology, the rigorous creative methodology, helps to illuminate the subject matter with new knowledge in those environments, and it provides the cues for the scientists to then be able to develop that knowledge further. So we have found that it's extremely useful.
Thank you. And in terms of that's the impact on the technology development, in terms of the impact, both actual and potential, in terms of shaping policies?
These very experimental environments, so the experimentation that happens on the ground, we find, particularly in the new European Bauhaus initiative, that they can feed policy directly from grassroots creative experimentation. And they provide evidence that's not just statistical, but that's actually tangible. We can see tangible human transformations as a result of engaging with new technology, so new kinds of affordances. And we also find new sorts of innovation breakthroughs. Now, if we can channel those directly from the ground to high-level policy, the policymakers can then design missions and mechanisms that can further engage communities on the ground to work towards the Green Deal. And this is one of the wonderful virtuous cycles that we can develop as part of this idea that we have at the new European Bauhaus.
Thank you. And one quick last question, if I might, in terms of what the EU can do to support all of this. We've heard earlier about some of the initiatives they're taken. I want to get a view from everybody on this, but from your perspective, and particularly in this area of sort of cross-innovation. So we've got the technology developers doing their thing in other sectors as well. You talked about what this industry, the CCIs themselves are doing, but between the sectors, can the EU support this? What can they do more to what they're already doing?
Absolutely. So to begin with, DG RTD has already adopted the Industry Commons as a big track within their programs, which is actually joining all sectors of industry in creating a space for common understanding, as I would word it, which is basically an interoperability space for that, which enhances innovation and particularly benefits then from creative innovation inputs. But we have been really thrilled with the vision at the top. So basically, we had recently a meeting with the President and Commissioners Breton, Ferreira and Gabriel all together. And the vision is unified in terms of joining the competencies from the culture creative sector and industrial data policy, for example. And further to that, we also agree that this junction is not only important for big cultural centers in Europe. We all know who those are, or which those cities are. What we are really keen to do is to roll out this methodology across the European region. So there is now something that I'm working with together with the Commissioner Ferreira's cabinet on the cohesion side, and also with the Interreg Europe and the Committee of the Regions, engaging in a new system where we are proposing an agile way in which we could engage 100 European regions to engage in this way. And basically, these are the regions that will most benefit in building regional ecosystems and combating the effects of climate change.
Thank you very much. Don't go away. Want to come back to you in a little while. But our last interviewee this morning, Lisa Lang, Director for EU Affairs and Policy Orchestrator of the EIT Climate Knowledge and Innovation Community, otherwise known as a KIC. She's also the founder of Electrocouture, which brings together, as I understand it, fashion design and technology, and the Powerhouse, an innovation agency for fashion and wearable tech. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us. In your sector, just to build on what we heard earlier from Spiros, how do you see the role, particularly in making the fashion industry more sustainable, the role of these breakthroughs? And can designers become enablers for the transition, do you think?
I think designers are, on the forefront of the transition, because designers by nature are the curators of change, because they're bridge makers. They have the ability to make technology accessible with an emotional layer, because it's very difficult to get emotionally connected with functions. Technology is a tool which has to be applied. And also there is an emotional connection in terms of inclusion, diversity, and social change. And all of that, a designer is doing that by nature, in combination, of course, with sustainable thinking, because good design is simply also sustainable. It's just a given. So if we want to scale up impact and the green transitions, the designers here are on the absolute forefront.
And do you think they're aware enough of that role that they play? Do you think we need to do more? And also their role in sustainability, but also how these technologies can really help to deliver on that?
Very good point. On the one side, if we look especially in the innovation startup scene, you see a lot of great companies like the Fabricant from the Netherlands, like the Fashion Innovation Center from Sweden, or SmartX AI from Portugal. So these are the non-traditional innovators with design becoming very, transition and disruptive orientated, whereas the traditional industry is lacking a little bit behind. And one of those issues is simply that when you look into fashion universities and the traditional education institutions, they are struggling with implementing technology and innovation strategies, because we have to actually train the trainers first. In the meantime, while the traditional industry is struggling, there are a lot of young, bright people already doing this. So the awareness is there. It's just like the timeline is a little bit different.
One more quick question before I open up our discussion. You're talking there about the awareness is there. I'm just wondering, those young people, those bright minds, what more can be done to support them? And conversely, how do you see design thinking? Can it have a strategic role in public policy?
Yes, it totally should. And it was about time that finally culture creative industries actually got acknowledged as a thing, in the European bubble. So I think it's like what we can do in terms from the European institutions. It's just like giving more access and more open doors and train the designer community in policy. That's the most important thing. It's not about that they don't want to. It's about like teaching the mechanics. Culture creative industry is highly fragmented, has a lot of SMEs, and we need to help them to help us. So, because we all want the same.
Yeah, on that point, Natasha, about the fragmentation, and when we look at the challenges, all this potential that you've all been talking about, and the challenge to get that take-up, to get it really used, and this interaction between policy and the industry and supporting each other, if you like. What for you is the most important challenge? Is it that fragmentation? Is it the skills and mindset issue? What is it?
I guess it's it's a difference in heartbeat, right? For a research institution, 4 years is nothing.
Yep.
For the creative industry, most of the companies in the Netherlands, if you are 20 FTE, you are large.
Yep.
So 4 years is like unimaginable. 4 months, that's the typical project that we work on. So you need to, but on the other hand, in this case, you need to put the creative industry first. So you want to show, you want to see what the projects are that they are working on, and then start from there and build on that with the research, and not the other way around.
Thank you. Michaela, a thought on the biggest challenge to realise all this potential?
It is really in terms of how we set our paradigms that we all follow. So particularly, for instance, for industry, if you think about industry, launched Industry 4.0 automation, the focus on automation in 2017. At that time, the creative industries were actually demonstrating the impact that automation and those kinds of systems that are devoid of any kind of ethical perspective have on human beings. So they were starting to highlight those issues. And very fast, it was understood by industry that the industry needs to progress to human-centric, which was Industry 5.0, which we have now. But already at the new European Bauhaus, we are introducing the idea of ecosystemic. So Industry 6.0, let's call it, ecosystemic, because of course we need to, in order to be sustainable and to really design sustainable systems for industry, we need to go beyond human into incorporating all ecosystems.
Indeed. And that ecosystemic approach, what we've been talking about all week here at Industry Days. Luca, from your perspective, the biggest challenge that lies ahead?
Yeah, I think I will repeat something that has been already said, but I would say education, of course. And let me say, this is more on the part of, let's say, of the mainstream industry. Because, for instance, when we approach clients in what we do, we always, find there's a huge gap of understanding of this kind of technologies, and also there's a competence mix that now is really new, is really nice, it's really specific. It's being, marrying quantitative knowledge with qualitative knowledge and understanding, a humanistic understanding of this kind of technology. And this is not present in the mainstream industries. It's really, really, really limited. So this is really the big challenge.
Thank you. And Spiros, I'm glad we still have you with us. For you, I'm interested, nobody really has talked very much about digital infrastructure and that area, whether that's a key challenge or not. But for you, Spiros, what do you think is the biggest challenge? You're muted, Spiros, sorry. The eternal words of COVID.
Sorry.
No, don't worry.
Yes.
It always happens in sessions talking about digital, always.
Yes, nothing new on my side. I mean, I would only add, let's say, what have been said before. I mean, the industry has some processes established, and they are kind of reluctant to change these processes, at least in an abrupt way. So we need to figure out a way how to converge and how to plug in, let's say, the value of new technologies into the existing processes. and yes, not to face them directly, but rather try to go hand by hand and divert them from their course, if I can use this analogy.
We only have a couple of minutes left, but Lisa, I wanted to come back to you in terms of priorities. We heard, and Rahana talked at the beginning about the VR Media Lab initiative to support creative cooperation. There's also the VR and AR coalition to stimulate this cross-fertilization that we were talking about. What for you is the most important, and how do you see the role of the KIC in all of this? This is about fostering these innovative solutions. What for you is the key priority? Same question to you all for action at EU level, 1 minute each. Lisa.
Simply just like doing the work and get started, right? There is a time to talk, but then there's a time to work. So like we at the Climate KIC, we are a part of the so-called cross KIC for the new European Bauhaus. We already had an ideation award and the community booster, and we are already working on like new programs where we are not only welcoming the design community to join our programs, but also that's where we actually have money to give and support and funding for SMEs. So I warmly welcome everyone to join our CrossKIC community here. And of course, in the background all the time, policy. It's mechanics, and we have to train the community to join us.
Thank you so much. Luca, your key priority for action at EU level.
Yeah, this is very simple. I think you might need to think of the tech-driven CCIs as a European key sector, a sector whose significance in terms of jobs will probably soon compare to the likes of the automotive and chemical industries in the next few years. So and by the way, these are already having such a cultural and societal impact. So it's really time, and I think this is the key priority.
Thank you, Michela.
I do have to latch on to this because actually in 2017, the gaming company King in Sweden was already twice as big as Volvo. So I think we've already been there and done that, actually, to be honest. And it's just a case of people waking up. But in that sense, from the European perspective, from the policy perspective and the funding mechanisms, there are two key things, I would say. One is we can actually join some of the funding mechanisms together in a sequence to actually boost ecosystems from sort of different injections if we join forces in strategic partnerships. And this is what we're working on at the moment. So joining with DG Regio, with Committee of the Regions, etc. The other one is that we need agile funding mechanisms. So if something gets blocked in the regional bureaucracy system, there will be years before it's released. We need actually really clever, and there are precedents for this. They have been done, and they worked really, really well in the past. For instance, like the Wi-Fi for Europe voucher scheme, for instance. So, for instance, there are mechanisms that can give us.
Agility is the key.
Precisely.
Agility is the key. Spiris, do you have a key priority for action by policymakers to support all of this?
Yes, in line with what has been said, I believe that training, let's say, it's an important thing. So putting up their curricula that will actually, let's say, educate people, educate the trainers and educate people to understand both sides and be able, let's say, to convert.
Thank you so much. I think we lost Volker. I would have liked to ask him about that. But Natasha, as you're here with me in the studio, you have the final word. For you, your key priority, what do you most want from EU policymakers to support your work?
I guess it's practice what you preach. So do what you want us as the creative industries to do. And I would definitely like to join wherever I can join. Send me the URL or whatever. Text it to my SMS. I even answer the phone instead of my kids. So, That's my most important thing.
Thank you very much, and thank you for such fascinating insights to just how much difference these technologies are making, can make, and what we need to do to get there. I'm now going to give the floor to Alessia Di Gregorio, who is Deputy Head of Unit for Proximity, Social Economy and the Creative Industries in DG GROW, European Commission, just to remind you, Directorate General for the Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs. Alessia, thank you to you at DG GROW, thank you to DG Connect for hosting this session, organising it. Over to you for some closing thoughts.
Thank you very much, Jackie, and many thanks to all speakers who accepted to join this session. First of all, I want to say very, very interesting discussion today. Indeed, all of us are aware that CCI express Europe values, Europe cultural values and diversity, but at the same time are an important part of our economy. They range from cinema and TV, performance arts, cultural heritage, fashion, lifestyle industries, just to mention a few ones. But today, we focused on common challenges and opportunities, fostering breakthrough technologies for the CCI ecosystem's growth. But having in mind that the digital transition is very important, and actually what the digital transition means for the CCI ecosystem. This is crucial, and this is crucial especially to ensure that CCI will be resilient, will be competitive, and also to ensure their autonomy in the future. Takeaways stressed today for me are clear. It has been said the COVID crisis has indeed accelerated the digital transition. It has emerged that CCIs needs to make efforts to keep the pace and develop new business models. Clearly, the technological developments like artificial intelligence, XR, IoT, 3D printings, we have seen all of these, are fields full of potential for the CCIs in terms of content creation, services distribution, relation to end users, and CCI must seize these opportunities. All in all, creative companies are often small businesses, micro-enterprises, or even just one-person companies, and so have specific needs compared to other sectors. They often need dedicated support on digital education, and they often lack the necessary entrepreneurial and digital skills. At the same time, we see that the creatives and designers increasingly drive innovation. Precisely, they are those who can foster digital, economic, and social transformations. They are those who are committed to values, and we have seen that today. Values like sustainability, inclusion, preservation of local culture and production. So, let me conclude by saying that creating crossovers and better synergies between technology and creativity would definitely help boosting competitiveness, but not only for the cultural and creative industry as such, but also for their ecosystem, for the EU industry as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alessia. And let me just add my thanks for very creative contributions to a very creative discussion. Very inspiring from all of you. Very, very grateful to you all. We are going to take a 15-minute break now. And then when we come back, we have 3 Meet the Expert sessions. 1 on Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs, the Enterprise Europe Network, and the Clusters Network, how they can support small and medium-sized enterprises in their growth ambitions. Another on bridging the gap between Europe's Davids and Goliaths. And a third on Your Europe Business, a portal that you need to know about when doing business abroad. So enjoy the break. See you back here at 11:15.